Kevin, thank you for joining us.
Look, if you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment you capture it, just let it slip. Yo, just let it slip. His palms are sweaty, knees deep, arms are sweaty, heavy, his garment on his sweaty, his garment on his sweaty, he's nervous, he's nervous, calm and ready, he's calm and ready, but he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down, the whole crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out, he's choking now, everybody's choking now, the clock's running out, time's up, over, snap back to reality, there goes gravity, there goes gravity, he's so mad but he won't, give up daddy, he won't have it, he knows, it's so bad that he's broke, it don't matter, he's dope. He knows that, but he's broke. He's so sad that he knows when he goes back to this moment. Home, that's when it's back to the land again, yo. So back to the better go back to this moment and hope it goes
And good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We're live, as always, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Share it out, smash the like button, retweet button, and over on YouTube, hit that thumbs up and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. I am your host, Phil Seifel. As always, joined by my man, Mark Moscatelli and Jason Voorhees. And we're just cutting the intro a little short here because we got a special guest this morning, and we want to make sure we get as much time in with him as possible. We've got the great Kevin Kinkead from Crossing Broad and from Fox the Gambler, Philadelphia Union post-game shows. Good morning, Kevin, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Hey, it's my pleasure. How's everybody doing this morning?
Fantastic.
Great. Wonderful.
Friday. It's really hard for me to get these guys up in the morning to do this morning show.
Yeah.
When Kevin Kinkead's coming on, they're like, they were in the room waiting 15, 20 minutes ago.
Oh, good. Well, that's great. I appreciate that. First of all, you never have to say the great Kevin Kinkead ever again. That's I appreciate that, but that's not a requirement. Listen, I'm just happy it's Friday. I got both of my daughters out the door without any protesting or screaming. The sump pump held out last night, so there's the most suburban dad introduction I can give you on a Friday morning. You know.
I was being a little generous with the great Kevin. I won't lie. I already told you I was messaging you a few weeks ago or a month or two ago. You know, you actually made my brother think I was famous because you shared one of my tweets in one of your Crossing Broad articles, and he was reading.
Oh, there you go.
Hold on, that's my brother's tweet right there. He's like, I didn't know who you were. I'm like, nobody knows who I am. That was just pure dumb luck.
Well, listen, I'm happy to help, even if it's inadvertent. You know.
All right, so we got lots of topics to cover in a short period of time with you here, but we were goofing around last night, chit-chatting and all, and obviously you do great work with Fox the Gambler as well, doing your Philadelphia Union post-game show, and I'm trying to get these boys a little bit more into, instead of being 4 for 4s, 5 for 5s, because the Philadelphia Union are one of the most underappreciated teams and probably the best team in this city right now. You've got, if you had 2 minutes or 3 minutes to tell Mark and Jason why they should be Philadelphia Union fans and tuning into them when they're on TV, what would you say to them?
Oh, 2 minutes, huh? No, I mean, I would just say that they're very easy to cheer for because I think the way that they play and the players that they have are representative of what Philadelphia sports fans look for from the Phillies and the Eagles and the Sixers and the Flyers. You just look for, no ego guys who are hard workers, who are going to buy into the system. A lot of local dudes, academy products who came up through the academy system in King of Prussia. So guys who are from our area, guys that play hard. It's funny. I use the cliche all the time. It's like, we do the tongue in cheek, like blue collar, hard hat, muck and grind Philadelphia type of player, but that's really who the Union are. They play like a hard nosed defensive system. And, they have a local coach who's from Montgomery County, who's a good dude and easy to cheer for. I think they have a lot of traits that are similar to what, people are looking for in the other 4 teams, things that we've complained about with Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz and all these guys over the years. So even if you're not a soccer fan, I think, and nobody's saying that you have to be, I think you can look at the team and appreciate that they do have a lot of those traits, that they have a lot of those qualities. And then finally, I would just say it's a good experience at the stadium. There's not a bad seat in the house. It's a good game day presentation. The games aren't too long. You're not sitting there falling asleep or anything. So it's a good time. If you guys make it down there and I make it back down there at some point, we'll have to give you the tour, like link up for a beer or something.
That's what I try to tell him, because
Right.
that's what got me into it. My buddy had season tickets. He brought me down. This was like 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And once you experience the stadium aspect of it and the atmosphere there, it just makes you want to tune in and check that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's fun. No, it's fun. I mean, the Sons of Ben are authentic and organic, and there's a lot of like the rest of the crowd gets into it. It's funny because I think you go to any other like game in Philadelphia. Well, first of all, it's different because it's the only team that doesn't play at the sports complex. Now, you're just going somewhere different. The stadium's different. The bridge going through the background. The fans are into it, and I don't know. They aren't. I'll say straight up, this Union team is probably the best Union team of all time. They aren't the most pleasing on the eye because they play an ugly kind of defensive, like grinded out style. But maybe Philly fans can appreciate that if they liked the Flyers teams of the past, or I don't know, Jim Johnson Eagles defenses or whatever. It's funny because they play similar to that. They have a lot of a-holes on the team. I would put it that way. Guys who are going to like make a hard tackle or like really play hard. But I don't know. I think that they turned the corner because I think that there's at least an appreciation of that. I think it also helped, if we're being quite honest too, that the Phillies stunk for the last 10 years. Because in order for one window to open, another door kind of has to close. I think people's attention might have been diverted a little bit. So it's nice to see more people accepting the team for sure. I like Glenn Macnow and I talk about this. Like, he's not a soccer guy. A lot of the old school radio guys and media guys aren't soccer guys either. And I'm like, hey, nobody's. I think the mistake that we made was trying to force people to like it. Like, oh, soccer's going to take over, and we said that in 1970, right? So I don't think we were helping ourselves by trying to force it on anybody. I think if people like it, they like it. And if they don't, they don't. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Soccer. I went to one match, and I had a load of fun down there at the park. I parked in the neighborhood, which was a little different. I parked on somebody's grass or something like that. It's a little weird down there.
Yeah.
But talking about like 4 for 4 now, 5 for 5. Where do you think they rank in the echelon of teams right now? Or do you really think they're the 5th favorite team, or do you think they've eclipsed the Flyers and maybe even the Phillies, or they still have a lot of work to do?
No, I think for sure they're still quite a solid 5th. And I think depending on individualism too. If you're a 4 for 4 Philly sports fan who went to Villanova, I think you would probably say that Villanova is your 5th team, or if you went to Temple, Temple's probably your 5th team or whatever. But I think there's an acceptance for the Union too. I believe it or not, I actually give Anthony Gargano a lot of credit for that, because he's he coined the 4 for 4 term, right? And he is actually, I've seen him at Union games before, because he's actually very close with the McDermott family. Sean McDermott, who's the Buffalo Bills head coach, his brother Tim is actually the chief business officer for the Philadelphia Union. So I've seen Cuz down there wearing a Bimbo jersey. And, I've heard him say on the radio, like, hey, we'll go 5 for 5. We'll include the Union here. I think that's cool, but no, I think even though the Flyers aren't doing very well, and hockey's become a little bit more of a niche thing over the years, I think baseball has become, a niche hyper local sport too, but Philly happens to be a large, like, hyper local baseball place. I still think for sure that the Union are the 5th team, but I definitely see over the years more acceptance, I think, of the sport. That doesn't necessarily mean people liking it, but it's less people like actively shitting on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'll say this: in my town, there's probably about 4 times as many kids playing soccer as they're playing baseball. And I think over time, I know, and we've said this since, like you said, 1970, but I think it's the real deal now. Like, there could be a generation coming up that is really going to support major league soccer in Philly and across the country, and it could eclipse these sports. I mean, listen, baseball, the way I see it, is scrambling to try to put out a product that is going to be more appealing to fans, with the universal DH and the runner at second, and all that, pitch clocks and stuff like that. But I think honestly it's too late. What's
the really town? Where do you live, Mark?
I live in Jersey. I live in Mantua Township.
Okay, so suburbs, yeah. It's interesting. I remember growing up. I'm 37, so I'm like at the tail end of like the millennial range. I think it goes up to like 40 now or something. But I grew up. I had like the Ken Griffey Jr. poster on the wall. I had like the Vince Carter poster on the wall. I didn't have any soccer stuff there because there wasn't anything to put up there. Like Major League Soccer didn't exist. You couldn't watch Manchester United on TV on Saturday morning. I think that's been a big help. If you're into like the Premier League, for example, it used to be like, say you're like a dad and you have like 3 kids and you guys are like into Penn State or something, before you'd watch like College Game Day or go out to like play your own baseball game or whatever. And then like the Penn State game would come on at noon, right? Now you have soccer on TV at like 10 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whatever. I think that's kind of helped fill like a broadcasting gap there where now there's more exposure to it. If you want it, it's there. I think for an entire generation of kids growing up, there wasn't anything there were no fans because there wasn't anything to watch, So I think like, Philadelphia Union started in 2010. If you were a 35-year-old dad and you took your 8-year-old to see the Union and when he was 8 years old, now it's 10 years later, now he's 18. So he's going to grow up with that, I think like a lot of what creates fandom is like you have these like impressionable moments. I remember my dad taking me down to the Stanley Cup playoffs in like 1995 with like Dominic Hasek and like the Sabres and the Flyers, right? So you remember those things, those tangible like live moments when you're at a game. That's how I became a Flyers fan and a Phillies fan and whatever. But they didn't those opportunities didn't exist for soccer because there was no team.
It's awesome.
All right,
I'm sold. I'm a fan.
I think you got him to sell. That was actually a really strong 2 minutes that turned into 8 minutes there. So
there you go.
That was perfect. That's how good it is there. All right, so we want to talk a lot about the great work you guys do over Crossing Broad on covering something that I know this is kind of it's kind of rude and weird to say it, but we don't bash the local sports radio scene, but we do a morning show. We always say turn off the dial, plug us into your car, listen to us on your car ride to work. Mark does it whenever he's not on. He listens to the morning show on his morning drive. So where the state of this radio wars is that you guys cover, it's a lot of fun. Watching and reading those articles. You guys had the great March Madness bracket. With all the guys there. So where is the state of the radio wars now?
Yeah, the radio wars aren't even really wars anymore. Everything kind of settled down after. The height of radio wars, that wasn't even a Crossing Broad yet. And that was basically Kyle just documenting all the crazy Josh Innes and Tony Bruno and Mike Missinelli stuff that was going on at the time. But these guys are like in the thick of it. They just love talking about each other and reading about themselves, and the drama seemed to like thrive in it. But I think what happened was when Spike Eskin took over for Andy Bloom, however many years ago it was. He didn't want to like be part of all that drama. So his approach with WIP was like, let's just stabilize things. Let's like get back to doing what we're doing. We're not going to worry about what the Fanatics do. We're going to put together a solid lineup with strong personalities and just get back to our bread and butter. And that worked for them. And they just started dominating in the ratings again. Fanatic is interesting because they've kind of gotten away. They brought John Kinkead in. John has WIP ties historically, and I think we always thought that he would probably end up going back there at some point. But it's interesting because he's doing well in the mornings now, especially with a younger demographic. And they're not really taking phone calls, which I think is the most interesting thing because Philadelphia sports talk radio has always kind of been predicated on like the caller format. Like not a lot of guests. Let's hear from Ingy. Let's hear from Chuck from Mount Airy. Let's hear from Eagles Shirley. Let's hear from all these people. It's great in essence because like the heart of Philly sports media in any form, it's like you want to try to include as many people as possible and make it a discussion. But like my take has always been like, I don't need to hear from that person every single day. I don't need to hear from that person for 5 minutes at a time. I think there's kind of a, maybe like an intersection here where I think you have shows like this, you have podcasts, you have a lot of different options where, terrestrial radio is going to have to kind of like reinvent itself and sort of think like, hey, it's a lot different. There's a lot more choices out there. It used to be you just, my dad would throw me in the car and we go to baseball practice and Howard would be on, because that's all it was. He wasn't plugging in his Bluetooth on his phone,
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. I think the stations there's very little, guerrilla movement going on between both sides. I think all those guys kind of get along, but like it's, to me, the radio war stuff is more like, hey, it's like terrestrial radio versus like new technology now. I think that's kind of where it's gone.
Well, speaking of WIP, that's actually was my favorite, obviously, show. More specifically, the morning show. I was a huge fan of that for years, and obviously they've had pretty much the same lineup for a long, long time. With that being said, I was wondering, we all know that the legend himself, Angelo Cataldi, will be retiring very shortly. was wondering if you had any inside info or maybe some insight on who you think might be taking over for him, and your thoughts on that show specifically, and what, just your thoughts, general thoughts.
Yeah, I I like what they're doing with the rotating kind of guest host every Wednesday, because I think it gives you, you're kind of canvassing the area, just logging as much sampling as possible to see what fans like, what management likes, what Odyssey executives like. John Johnson has done it, John Marks has done it, Joe Giglio has been in that slot. They brought Jason Kelsey in as a guest. They had Ross Tucker do it. I think they've gone through like 10 or 12 guys now, all kind of cycling in there. There's like multiple things to think of. It's like when you bring in a new host, number one, do you stay in-house? Do you give like Joe DeCamera that gig? And then if he gets it, do you keep Rhea and Al and Jonesy? Like, do you keep the rest of that group intact? I personally think that the rest of the group kind of interacts differently when Angelo's not there. They talk a little bit more, they drive the conversation a little bit more. So that's like two things I'm really curious about. Is number one, are they going to make the hire internal, or are they going to go external? Because I think WIP historically has done well with moving their existing talent into different day parts. Is that person going to work with Rhea and Al and Jonesy? So that's kind of the number one thing that I think I'm interested in there. They don't have their minds made up yet. They've got the entire year to do it. So it's a chance that Angelo decides he's not going to retire. This has happened before. But I've always ragged on the show, I think, just because I feel like I'm listening to the same show I listened to 30 years ago. And I know that people like it, and I know people find entertainment in it, which I think is fine. I don't really like the shtick of like, I speak for the Philly sports fan, or we're going to complain about this, or we're going to demand accountability for that. I don't think a younger portion of Philly sports fans really think that way. I don't think they care too much what Gabe Kapler is going to do to Gene Segura if he doesn't hustle down the line, but I appreciate Angelo and Howard for, creating that 20 years ago, 25 years ago, for a generation of fans that I think were more into accountability and wanted, demanded excellence from their athletes and whatnot, so I think I think a younger generation is looking a little bit more for, pragmatism and objectivity and less of the Negadelphia kind of stuff. And I think that's probably where a lot of the criticism or the schism kind of stems from.
I mean, you're in with the right people there. If they can't make up their mind, Mark, Jason, and we'll take over the morning show.
We'll crush
we already got a good routine going here. Just put in a good word, trending in the AM. That could take over the morning show. Routine.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting too, because I think we were all conditioned to kind of think that John Kinkead would probably come back and take over for Angelo, and it just didn't work out. It didn't match up. He was ready to come back. They weren't ready to replace Angelo yet, and I don't even know if leadership over there was as high on John as maybe other people were. That's another curious thing too, because I think Angelo is a guy who's been there for so long. He's got so much sway and so much pull within that company. I'll give you, it's not really a secret, but like the insider information is that nobody tells Angelo what to do. Like he's running his own show. He wants to bring Hollis Thomas back after Hollis Thomas threatened to file a lawsuit against the previous program director. Yeah, do whatever, do your thing, because he's such a cash cow for them and he makes so much money and he's been so successful, and nobody's going to tell Angelo what not to do. What I'm trying to say with that is like, hey, does Angelo have a say in who his successor is going to be? That's another thing to consider too. Or do they say, hey, thanks, but you're finally done. We're going to make this decision. So it's fascinating. There's a lot of moving parts. It's almost like Action News had Jim Gardner, and it's like Action News is like loaded because they just replaced like a 50-year veteran with like a 30-year veteran in Rick Williams. It's like insane, like how deep they are over there. WIP can't really do that. They have talented people in-house, but they don't. There's no like dude who's next in line. It's not like Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre,
Yeah, they don't have the strength of bench. They have a bench, but not the strength.
Yeah, there's not one like consensus like, hey, this is definitely the person who's gonna replace him.
I mean, my original thought was John Johnson, but I'm not.
Well, now John's doing the overnight show. He's taking Big Daddy's show, and good for him, because he's going to get paid. I think he's going to get paid more money because he's doing a consistent like full-time hosting gig versus running around like a chicken with his head cut off and going to the Phillies and going to the Sixers and doing 6 to 10 on the weekends and then doing the morning show and covering. So knowing him, having known him for a while, I think he probably craved that kind of stability, for sure. He can still contribute to the morning show after he does that Big Daddy shit from 2 to 6, and then he'll bleed right into it. But I don't know, maybe they could circle back, in 6 months or whenever Angelo leaves, and come back to John and say, hey, maybe the morning show's up for grabs here. So
good segue. And you mentioned 6ABC. A lot of people, you post a lot about 6ABC and just in general with we don't have like movie stars in town, so our news people are celebrities, and they have been the GOAT of news for forever. There's a recent departure with Jeff Skaversky that you've been covering and you've been tweeting out. Yeah. Are you ready to break that story on our show here, or you still got to do some verifications?
Yeah, no, I can share some new information on it for sure. It's hard because you gather bits and pieces of information. It's kind of like off the record, or people say, hey, keep this a secret, or I heard this or whatever. But then you try to, bounce that off like a second person or a third person and say, hey, can I flesh this out? Can I get some more confirmation here? My understanding of what happened and why he still has the Action News, written into like his Twitter and his social media and whatnot is because the ABC O&Os, the owned and operated stations, which are run by Disney, they all went through like a little downsizing shift at the end of last year, right? Where they basically just reduced the staff at some of the bigger cities, New York and Philly and whatnot. And so what happened with Action News was they just went from 3 sports anchors down to 2. Right. So Jeff was number 3 on the list. So Deuces is still there. Jamie's still there. Jamie kind of slid over to weekends. But I think what happened, my understanding is that there may have been an opportunity for some of the people who were laid off to come back in like a different, like a role, different role. So maybe not sports, but maybe there was like a lingering discussion with Jeff to say, hey, hang on, maybe we can have you come back like 3 days a week and just go out in the field and do some like reporting. Right. So I think what happened was there was, this lingering thing where maybe there's going to be an opportunity to come back in a different role. So let me just leave ABC in my bio. I'm not going to make an announcement. I'm not going to say I left officially because it hadn't technically happened yet, because there were discussions about maybe we'll come back and do something different, So I think he didn't want to, if I had to go into his head and guess, it would be like, hey, let me not like make this official announcement that I'm gone, because I don't really know technically if I'm gone yet. Like there may be an opening here to come back in a different role. So I think that's why the mystery ended up being what it is.
It's funny you post that stuff on Facebook, and a lot of people will post like, why are you posting this? Nobody cares. I think a lot of people do care, especially if something happens on Action News where their favorite anchor or reporter isn't there. There's a big uproar, at least in my house. I mean, there's like, well, where's Jim Garner? Why is Rick Williams on it?
Yeah, but you know what it is, Mark? It's like nobody. I know, like we do it in a goofy way because we're like a goofy blog, or and we have like our tone or whatever. But nobody else in Philadelphia is really reporting on this stuff either. Mm-hmm. Like Rob Tourneau at the Philadelphia Inquirer will do. Like every so often he'll talk to like Angelo or like a WIP guy, but that's not like his main job. The Inquirer used to have like a. I don't want to call her like a gossip columnist, because she wasn't a gossip columnist, but it was more like a who's coming and who's going. Like Susan Barnett leaves Action or Eyewitness News or whatever, but nobody's really like, nobody's covering that kind of stuff. Nobody's like we're the only ones, for example, who have been like writing about the Inquirer and all the crazy stuff that's been going on over there. So in addition to us just being goofy and having fun with it, like I do think like honestly there's a need to have that information because nobody else is doing it.
Yeah, which is a great segue, Kev, about the Inquirer. And you're like the Stu Bykowski now. Like you're covering like all the gossip that's going on within that realm there. And with the Inquirer, I thought you did a fabulous job covering what has been going on over there. For me, as an older gentleman who was raised on the Sunday Inquirer and the stats that were in there and the articles and things like that, and just the newspaper industry in general, it is obviously a shell of its former self, and people are getting their news elsewhere. For the Inquirer to bring in outside people, not so much outside people, but people with not a lot of newspaper or reporting experience to cover the city, and then having those editors not even live in the city is just. I can't get over it. Like how could that happen? How could that happen? I'm going to put the ball in your court. Tell me why are things trending that way? I think that's a disgrace that you don't have your editors living in the city that they cover. Where is their touch? Where do they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on? And I don't think that's happening at all.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, when people like Glenn Macnow and Ray Didinger come out and criticize that, then it tells you everything, because then it's not just me like on Crossing Broad bitching about something. It's like, okay, like the most revered person in Philadelphia sports media thinks the same thing. I think they kind of painted themselves into a corner, Mark, to answer the question as basic as possible, because you go back to, you could go back even further and say, like, look, the model for fewer people were buying newspapers. How are we going to make money? You explore a paywall. Are people willing to pay for something when you have free sites like a Philly Voice, Crossing Broad, subscription dollars going to The Athletic, superior content like at places like The Athletic for sure. But what happened was in 2020, in the wake of the George Floyd stuff, the employees there revolted, and they said, we're too white and we're too old and we're not doing stories that appropriately cover the city or persons of color. And they had that revolt, right? So the Inquirer, to their credit, addressed the revolt and said, all right, well, let's try to get better here, right? So they did the Temple University study. They had them commission a study from Temple to say, hey, tell us what we're doing wrong here. Temple said, you're too old, you're too white, you're too male, all this stuff, blah, 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 right? So and then you're kind of stuck, because if you don't act on that, then what was the point of doing the study in the first place, So they bought out every single older white guy who had been working there forever, your Bob Brookovers and your Bob Fords and your Les Bowens and all these guys, right, who carried a lot of, you can say whatever you want to say about anybody's individual work or the quality of the Inquirer up until that point. But these guys have been around for a long time. They carried a lot of institutional knowledge with them for sure. Contacts, just respect from like longevity and being around. And you guys know, I don't have to tell you, like, one of the things in Philadelphia is just like people like what they're familiar with, guys who have been here for a while, men and women on TV who they're familiar with, who they trust. So when you get rid of people who have been here for a long time, that's an issue, right? And I think the guy who came in, the sports editor, Mike Huang, who came in, was in a tough situation because he's like, hey, we need to add women. We need to add black men. We need to add Asian men. We need to diversify. We need to be a different kind of newsroom. And so they targeted specific people because they had to look a certain way. If they didn't do that and they didn't act on the Temple report, then what was the point, right? So, I think they kind of shoehorned themselves then, because they hired a bunch of people based on what the newsroom had to look like, and ended up with some people who didn't have a lot of experience, or who weren't even living here, which is ridiculous, So you can't have an editor who lives in Chicago. You can't have an editor who lives in LA, because they can't immerse themselves into what Philly sporting culture is like. They're not going to be at the Wawa and Delco, like drinking a coffee, talking to the guy about whether Nick Castellanos is going to hit a home run today. You know what I mean? It's like those small things that kind of like help you dive into it. But yeah, I'm very fascinated by all that. I feel for the Inquirer. I think that they didn't really have a lot of choices at the same time, but with the limited choice making that they have, I think they got a lot of it wrong. There's a lot of good people over there, though. I'm sure they'll figure it out, but it's a tough situation that was that they kind of had to act on. And when they acted on that, they ended up kind of painting themselves into a corner.
Yeah, my issue isn't necessarily with the diversity. I welcome that as well. It's the experience. I always expected the Inquirer like to be that paper where you have veterans covering the city and covering sports, and not guys that are breaking in. And that's what that, and the fact that a lot of people aren't local that are covering the news, that they're not living local. That's what's floored me. And gosh, I hope it changes, because I do try to read the Inquirer here and there, and it's still the go-to paper. But it's a shell of its former self. And I appreciate you guys covering it the way that you do, because like you said, I think stuff like that is needed in the city, and there's not a lot of it out there now.
I would just say real quick too that I think it hit them the hard. I think the people who were hit the hardest were the two new Flyers writers that they hired, who were two young women, who didn't have a ton of experience, but the one had done Auburn football down there for a couple of years, which is massive. Like it's like that may as well, college sports may as well be pro sports down there. And Olivia was doing like the Packers and some other things, and they come in to their first year at a new job, and it's the worst Flyers team of all time. And like the story is like how shitty the Flyers are and how bad the Comcast is, there's everybody's like button heads. But how do you walk into something like that as a new reporter? When you're trying to like find your footing and establish relationships with people and get to know the players and get to know the executives and stuff like that. And the only thing everybody wants is like accountability. Why is this team so bad? Now, if you had like a Sam Donnellan who was still there, who did the Flyers for forever, like he can write the Flyers stink column with that credibility, but you're trying to establish two new reporters at the same time that the team is having like their worst season ever. And it's just, there's not really anywhere for you to go.
We had a great header for Flyers season this year, but with what's up with the Flyers. But we actually have only put this on the screen like 3 times this entire.
Oh, well, there you go.
season.
I'm glad you can make another use out of it.
You gave me a reason to put what's up with the Flyers up on the screen.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but we don't care about the Flyers right now. It's opening day. Real quick, I know we got to let you go here in a second.
It's all good.
But thoughts on Phillies? It's opening day. There's a lot of promise. You brought up Nick Castellanos' name a second ago. Where are you with this Phillies team? Are they going to be as good as some people are hoping? Me, I'm a little in the middle there, still on them. But what are your thoughts with this Phillies team?
Bet the over. Bet the over in every game for sure. That's a good thing too.
The over is. I got it up on my screen here. It's 8
what
runs.
Is it 8 for today?
8.
Oh, I would smash that out. Yeah.
Minus 1.5. 8's the over under, and the money line's minus 185. Of course, I always got my betting odds up on the screen for everything.
It's funny because like everybody talks about like home runs and strikeouts in baseball now. The Phillies of 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11 weren't much of a finesse team, really. They weren't like executing the most amazing version of small ball ever. Like they were like crushing home runs and just like battering the ball. You know what I mean? So, it's actually funny because like they're probably going to rake so much this year that I think that takes actually, pressure off the starting pitching because they know that they're not going to have to like, give up. If they give up 2 runs, it's over. You know what I mean? Because like their offense is that they're going to actually get run support this year, and you factor in, the defensive like projections of them not being very good in the field. And you say, well, let's just hope that offense trumps all, they're hoping that offense wins championships, and if they rake enough, then you don't worry about the starting pitching and you don't worry about the defense. But from a macro level standpoint, it's just, I think it's probably the the team that we've been most excited for on paper since 2013, 2012, I guess. Yeah, I'm trying to remember when they fell off, but first time in 10 years. Isn't it crazy to think that the drought, that only the Seattle Mariners have a longer drought than the Phillies, which is insane because it wasn't long ago that the Phillies were doing better on sports talk radio than the Eagles were. Mm-hmm. I remember that clear as day. They were taking more Phillies phone calls than Eagles phone calls for that stretch. They were Andy's final year was terrible. And Roy Halladay was in his like third year, second year or something like that. But I don't know. I feel Philly's better when the when the Phillies are good. Because it fills the gap in the summer and the ballpark's rocking again. And selfishly, it gives us more to write about on Crossing Broad, so we're not filling in the summer with like bullshit Eagles mock drafts and stuff like that. So and it'll get Bob Wankel back to writing too because he's a great baseball mind and definitely knows the sport better than I do. But I'm excited. I'm probably the most excited I've been for a Phillies team in at least 10 years, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's. I've always said that Philadelphia is a baseball town that right now just happens to be dormant, and I think this team can kind of break it wide open and could be fun at the ballpark, like from 07 to 11, if you remember. Like every night was a party. It was great, and it's we've missed that for a while. One other thing, Kevin, kind of getting back to Crossing Broad. What's in the future with Crossing Broad? What can we see? Are you working on any stories? Are you looking to expand some things there? Do some more podcasts, stuff like that? What do you got going on there? What's cooking there?
Well, we Crossing Broad was acquired about a year ago, which I think you guys know. So we're owned by a different company now, and we also have a New York site. So I actually took a promotion a couple months ago where I'm going to be overseeing the New York site in addition to running Crossing Broad. We have another Kyle on staff who's writing some things for us as well and doing some video. So we're trying to expand a little bit more into video and maybe do a streaming show in the future. But for the most part right now, we're just kind of hammering the gambling space, which we're doing well with. And, Kyle Scott, who founded the site, who doesn't write anymore, he's a VP with the company that we that owns us now. So
Villanova grad.
Villanova grad who made his blog, following Jeff Carter around Sea Isle City and all the goofy stuff that he was doing down there. He's now a VP who's in charge of making a lot of money. So we've come a long way in a short amount of time. But yeah, I mean, we always like to go back and kind of look at the podcast network again too. A lot of that stuff is just kind of side stuff that guys do for fun. Russ and Anthony do Snow the Goalie, and that's really popular and they do well with it. I've got my Union podcast, which is just like a side thing for content. And but yeah, I mean, we do want to kind of circle back once we come up for air here with the New York site and some of the other things that are going on behind the scenes, and kind of take a look at CB content again for sure. But in the meantime, just keep hammering the topics that people like, and readership's been really good. We always appreciate people reading and understanding what we're all about. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're trying to just have fun, and hopefully people learn something at the same time. So
did you cover any Masters gambling content on Crossing Broad? I didn't get.
I think Phil might have written something. Believe it or not, I'll leave you on this. My wife is actually telling me she's at in 10 minutes she needs a pickup for an oil change. So that's new to me. But I my first job was in Augusta.
Okay.
So I out of college, I worked at the ABC television station in Augusta. So it was nice because your first big, you had the experience of doing like a really huge like news event covering the Masters, because a lot of TV people go into these small like podunk towns like Presque Isle, Maine or something. There's nothing to cover except like the local town hall meeting, So it was really cool. I got on the course both years during the practice rounds, and I was just able to walk the course and like follow Tiger around and follow VJ Singh around. And it's I don't know if you guys have ever been down there, but it's like everything and more. And I'm not really a golf person. I don't sit around and watch golf or whatever, but the course is like perfectly manicured. Everything is old school. There's like no electronic stuff. Like it's cheap. You buy like a pimento cheese sandwich for $1.50. The beers are affordable, so they don't gouge. It's like it's throwback, but in a good way. So if you I don't know if you guys have like a sports bucket list or anything like that written down, but I would definitely add the Masters to it for sure. Yeah, it's a fun experience. It's completely different.
I host a golf gambling podcast. I love it. That's like probably right there with Wrigley Field as the two places I want to go more than anything in my life.
Yeah, you definitely got to add it on. You don't even have to get the badges too. Like I don't know if you can do this anymore, but what we did was we stood outside the gate, and when people come in with those, they don't call them tickets, they call them badges, right? Because they're all fancy down there. But they're like exchangeable. So we just stood outside the gate and we were like, yo, we want to buy tickets. So we gave a dude $50 for the tickets that he already used. And he left at like noon, and we walked in at like 12:30 and spent like, 3 hours just walking the rest of the course. So that's how we did it.
Is that all right? Is that a Judas Priest shirt you're rocking there, brother?
Yeah.
Dude, you just made my day. Like, honest to God.
Yeah, I'm probably the biggest. Yeah, there's not a lot of heavy metal rock and roll guys in the local media, but I'm one of them. They played at the Met, I guess 2 weeks ago. Were you there?
He hosts a podcast called Sports and Metal. So
okay, all right. Well, we'll have to hook up after the show then, and we'll set up a appearance on that. Yeah, I've always been just a huge heavy metal fan too. Actually, there's a Philadelphia heavy metal magazine called Decibel. And the guy who runs it, his name is Albert, and he's like the biggest Phillies fan you'll ever meet. And he had a bet with there's this death metal band in California called Exhumed, right? And that guy's like a huge San Francisco Giants fan. So back with the NLCS, however many years ago it was, 10 years ago, they had a bet and they put it in the magazine and everything. But there's actually a lot of like crossover between extreme music, heavy metal fans and Philly sports at the same time. Every time I go to a Philadelphia show, I always see Eagles hats and shirts and Philly stuff and Flyers stuff. So I feel like we're well represented,
Absolutely.
Well, let's let Kevin go pick up his wife. That oil change is done.
Yeah, I don't want to be late for that for sure.
Yeah, hey, Kevin, thank you very much again, everybody. This is Kevin Kinkead from Crossing Broad. We greatly appreciate your time this morning, and keep up the awesome work.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. I love the all the independent stuff that everybody's doing. Crossing Broad started in the same fashion. It's just Kyle dicking around in his basement in his house. So so it's cool to I'm happy to jump on the show whenever.
Awesome. Right, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
cool.
Kevin.
All right, guys.
Brother.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. That was Kevin Kinkead from Crossing Broad. That was awesome, guys. Mark, you earned your keep this week by getting a great guest on the show.
That's great. I get to go on another show on Monday. That's awesome.
You're not fired this week. Although I almost fired a kid last night at the pizza shop. So I brought a 19-year-old guy to tears practically last night. But anyway.
Phil's probably a prick to work for. What do you think, Jason?
Actually, I think Phil's probably pretty fair.
I'm the most fair guy in the world.
That's your wife. I bet your wife lays the hammer down. Is that what it is?
Actually, everybody, when we hire people, they look at me with the beard, the tattoos. They think I'm the scary guy. But I try to tell them all within their first week, yo, you don't need to worry about me. You got to worry about the wife. She's the one that lays the hammer down. She's the one. When you piss her off, you better run and hide because she'll tear you a new one. But yeah, that was awesome. Great. I mean, we took up a lot of Kevin's time, and we didn't really even talk much Phillies. It's opening day, guys. So I mean, we got 25 minutes here. We got to do a quick opening day prediction kind of, closing segment of this show here. Start with you, Jason. Your ballpark predictions on how this season's going to go for the Phillies.
Well, I want to believe that the Phillies will win the division, but I still have a few questions as far as their pitching staff, starting pitching more specifically. I do think that the Phillies will make the playoffs. I actually believe that 3 teams in the NL East are going to make the playoffs this year. I just think the NL East is actually a lot stronger, 100 times stronger than it was just last year. I mean, between what the Mets did and what the Phillies both, did as far as free agency. And I'm very excited about this Phillies team. Like Kevin just said, like, I haven't been this excited since 2011. Like, I am so happy, not only that they went over the tax and that they have this fierce lineup that they've built, but I'm actually more happy about the fact that they have some young kids on this team that are actually going to be able to help them in this process moving forward. And that's the Bryce and Stott, Mickey Moniak, which we'll get to that.
Damn.
Obviously, that was totally shitty blow that he took.
I have an opinion on that.
Breaking his hand. But anyway, and Alec Boehm, I'm very excited about these kids. I actually, my bold prediction, I'm going to give it to you right now. I actually gave it on my show last night. I think Bryce and Stott wins NL Rookie of the Year. I'm actually going out.
I was talking yesterday about the odds, and I believe Bryce Stott was 4th or 5th on the odds betting list to win Rookie of the Year. I actually liked Mickey Moniak's odds a little bit better because just price wise, you get a better return. But Mickey Moniak, before the news that he was out for 4 to 6 weeks, he was only, I think he was 9th on the list. So people really, were starting to buy in on the betting market that Mickey Moniak had a chance. Mark, what's your take on the Mickey Moniak situation that you were just saying?
I'm really sad that he broke his hand, and I'm angry that he broke his hand because of the game that they played in. They played in that stupid spring training game that is in the home ballpark at Tampa. We've hosted those spring training games in the past. We've played them in the past. They're totally useless games, and for him to break his hand in that game, it just makes my blood boil. Like it just wasn't necessary to A, play the game, and B, if the game was to be played, for him to play. He had made the team already. It just really, really bothers me. Now we have to wait 6 weeks, and it's a busted wrist. He's going to be affected. He's probably going to adjust his swing. He might be back at square one, and God, I hope not, because he was destined to start really, really hot. Before they get a real big book on him. And that would be his next hurdle to kind of jump over to see if the pitchers adjust to how they pitch to him. We just got to wait now, and hopefully it heals up. Hopefully it's not that bad. They said it was a hairline fracture. Maybe he'll come back a little bit earlier than the 6 weeks. But I am excited for this team. The over-under is, 86.5 for wins? I think they're going to win 92. I think they'll break the 90-win barrier. I think they'll win 92. I think they're going to mash the ball all summer. And I think it's going to be a really fun summer. I think that stadium is going to be packed. especially during their late season run for the playoffs. I don't know if they win the division, but I do think they make the playoffs. From there, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to look towards the end of the season. If they're going to be able
the 92 wins is hard for me to get to yet. But the theory, and I just came up with this, the thought process in the last day or two. We've already gone over the luxury tax. Dave Dombrowski, Middleton, and company come beginning of July when they see where this team, we're obviously going to mash. You guys know I'm still a lot more. Everybody's got the question marks with the pitching, the bullpen and stuff, but it's even bigger with me. Like in my mind, I'm still really concerned about the pitching. So come late June, early July, when we know where this team's at, I'm not scared of Dave Dombrowski going to John Middleton and being like, yo, we're going to go trade for this major starting pitcher that's going to put us even further over the, luxury tax, because we're already over the luxury tax. So I have the confidence now that, come the trade deadline, if we need a starting pitcher to slot in the 2-hole, to slot in the 3-hole of that rotation, Dombrowski will get the job done and get the okay, whether it's moving Stott, whether it's moving Verling, whoever he has to move to get that big name, he'll do it. And I think he'll get the okay. And that's the difference between us getting to 88 games as one to 90 to 92 is if he gets the okay to make another big move as the season goes on to fill in that. And if starting pitcher's not a problem, to go out and get a big-time closer. We've seen the Craig Krimbles of the world get traded at the deadline before, the Chapmans and all. If closing seems to be our biggest issue, he'll go out and spend the big money at the trade deadline now that we're over it to get that closer.
All these owners are egomaniacs. And John Middleton, I think more than anything, wants to win a World Series with him being the majority owner. And if they are in the thick of it and they are really going to make that push, I don't see it being a problem, him going further over that luxury tax in order to get that prize so he can be the guy holding that trophy at the end of the year. So I agree with you there. I think that move will happen. I think, to quote Phil, ancillary moves, I think if the young guys work out, you could see Didi on the trading block for maybe a middle reliever or something to that, because I don't know if he's long for the Phillies. I don't think I don't know if he'll be here at the end of the year. That's my opinion.
Jason, you were going to say something there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just going to agree with you that I think, the fact of the matter is that they've already went all in to the point where when you go over the tax, to me, that signifies Middleton is basically all in. And if they didn't go all in, we'd be having a different discussion right now. If they didn't sign Nick Castellanos, this team, we would be still having a lot of question marks. Not that Kyle Schwarber wasn't a good signing, because he was. But when you went the extra mile to sign Castellanos, not only did you sign, one of the top 10 guys, you signed, arguably, Castellanos was the top free agent available at the time when we signed him. So you already did that. Odds are, if this team is in contention, you're right. They're going to make a move for whatever position they need. And they have – see, a lot of people say, well, the Phillies don't have a lot of assets. Well, you're right. They don't have a lot, but they have a few good ones. And I think the guy that I look to be probably the most tradable asset, because I wouldn't trade Bryce and Stott unless you the only way I'm trading Bryce and Stott, here's where I'm at. If a JC Ramirez becomes available and the Phillies say, wow, we want JC Ramirez, and you want to try to build a package and go after him, yeah. I mean, Ramirez is probably top 2 elite third baseman in the league. He's able to play second base. He's a guy that would definitely make this team. That'd be another superstar, but I don't think they would even have the money to get a guy of that caliber. But I think Alec Boehm is the guy that is probably more than likely to get traded, because he's kind of the odd man out, especially if Stott performs well at that third base role. I'm not a huge fan of moving guys around a la Scott Kingery. I mean, we've talked about that, how that kind of backfired, and it was basically an awful experiment. But I will say that I think Bryson Stott, his bat is too good to not have in the lineup. And if the only way around it is to have him at third base right now, then that's okay with me, because I really think I'm high on Bryson Stott. I already just said I gave my prediction. I think he wins NL Rookie of the Year. He reminds me of Chase Utley. He's got that West Coast swagger. He's a guy that has loads of talent. He's not great at a lot of things, but he's good at – I mean, he's not great at one thing, but he's good at a lot of things, if that makes sense. He's not going to hit 35 home runs. He's not a power hitter, but he's a guy that can sneakily hit 20 home runs. He's going to hit for average. He's going to play good defense. He's an all-tool guy type, player. And that's all you could ask for, at this point, in the fact that we've never realistically in the last 20 years had a superstar prospect on this team. So I'm very high on Stott, and I think
I want to catch up, because I apologize. I didn't mean to say Stott. I meant to say Alec Boehm when I was saying trade for, I'm not sure why I said Stott there. That was meant to be.
But I wasn't even. Actually, I didn't even realize.
I know. I don't want people to find that clip from 5 minutes ago and be like, "Oh, Phil says that he wants to trade, Stott." No, I don't want
overreaction Monday. Save it for overreaction.
They'll be on there. They're gonna be attacking it, Phil.
It was a slip of the tongue. That's all it was.
Coming at you.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so real quick, I want to go through some over-unders with you guys. So I got some of the over-unders for this team, and thoughts on it. So wins, we've already all said the over-under is at 86.5. We all agree they're most likely. I actually may go bet that over if it's still at 86.5 online. We agree on the over there. I say 88, 89, maybe 90 if they get a big guy. Mark, you said 92. Jason, where do you got the Phillies winning?
I'm going to say 91.
Okay. Right. Jason,
88. I'm sorry.
You got 88. I got 92. Jason, you got 91. Jason, you said that 3 teams from the NL East are going to make it. Braves, Phillies, and Mets, or Marlins?
Braves, Phillies, and Mets.
I like how Mark just completely eliminated the Nationals from that thought process. He put the Marlins ahead of the Nationals. I love it.
Well, listen, the Marlins keep beating the shit out of us.
Marlins are going to beat out the Nationals. The Marlins are going to be the 4th team. I think the Nationals finish in the basement.
I do too.
That's another bold prediction, I think.
All right. Total All-Stars from this team, over under 2.5. I think this is another smash the over 2.5, because you got JT, you got Bryce, Schwarber's been an All-Star, Castellanos has been an All-Star, Nola, Wheeler, Knebel, all these guys have been All-Stars. They got a lot of guys on this team that have been All-Stars before, and that's not even saying Odubel Herrera's name. It's got to be over 2.5 All-Stars from this team, right?
I'm going 4.
4.
I'm going to take the under, because I think we're going to get disrespected. Remember, Bryce Harper didn't make the All-Star team last year, and he won an MVP.
Well, he was terrible in the first half of the season. It took Jason calling him out, live on the air, for him to turn into an All-Star MVP product. Again, have you gotten that check from Bryce Harper yet for that MVP win? Because you deserve 10% of that bonus.
Starting next year, I'll be getting my royalties every year for his whole life of his contract.
All right. In 2009, the Phillies set the record for most home runs for a team, a Phillies team, with 224. So over under 224.5 home runs this year. Smash.
They're going to have 177. They're going to have 177 from the best 5.
That's a lot to ask, man. That's a lot to ask. No, I mean, I think it's possible, but that's a lot. That's a lot to hope that everybody does, because one of those guys, in my opinion, is going to hit only like 20 home runs. It's just going to be a law of averages.
I'm going to say over, especially you're going to see a lot the first half of the season, because spring training wasn't nearly as long as it is. So guys are just going to start feeling their way, and they're going to give up some gopher balls, man. It's just going to It's going to be a home run fest, I think, early in the season, and it'll probably level
That
off.
Liberty Bell is going to be going like this a lot of times down there at that bank.
I think it was semi-broken last year. I read somewhere.
That's what they said. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so they better get that thing fixed because.
And they put a press release out that it was in fact fixed over the offseason.
Okay, gotcha. All right, last year's team ERA was 4.39. This year the over/under is set at 4.30. I'm going the over the 4.30 because I'm still sticking to my point that I'm not buying this pitching staff, starters, or bullpen being better than last year. 4.30. Yeah, over.
Yeah, I think it's going to be over too. I mean, remember, there's a universal DH now, so the pitchers aren't going to bat. So that's probably going to add a little bit to it.
Yeah, the starters had 4.25 last year. The relievers were 4.6. You know, the team was 4.39. You know, I just
Over.
you got to see you're going to see some regression from Zach Wheeler. You might see some positive regression from Aaron Nola, and there's a lot of unknowns with the rest of it. So, yeah, over. All right, so Bryce. So we talk home runs. Bryce Harper is at over under 36.5 home runs. Over?
I think Bryce Harper this year, and I'm going to tell you why. He did what he did last year, carrying the team on his back with no support. He now has support in front of him and behind him. They're going to have to pitch to him. Yes, the over.
He's only hit over 34 home runs once in his career.
He's going to hit 40. Trust me. I'm telling you, the law of averages.
Bookmark it. I'm calling the no on that, but okay. I see him hitting 30-32 max. Mark?
I think it'll be under. I think they're going to pitch around him a lot. I think you'll see his on-base percentage go up. He'll still hit like 33, 34, but I don't think he's going to eclipse 40.
All right, so I'm guessing.
I'd like him to, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
I'm guessing Jason's going to say over on this next one. Castellanos and Schwarber combined 66 home runs, over under. Yeah, you don't even have to talk, Jason. I know you're on the over on that 110%. Let me see
on the over on pretty much every offensive category. I don't think it's a stretch.
Average. Castellanos has averaged 31.5 home runs in his career. Schwarber 34.5. So that puts you at 66 on the number. I don't know. There's going to be some.
I would probably take overs on that.
Yeah. I mean,
I
think you're forgetting a couple things. They play at Citizens Bank. Citizens Bank. That's all you got to say. Summer, the heat, ball flies out of the park. They're all. I get what you're saying. Yeah, there's going to be somebody. The guy that's not going to hit a lot is JT. JT probably will hit 24, 25.
We don't need him to hit homers, though. We need him to stay healthy and be great catching first. Anything happens at the plate is gravy.
We could circle back to this show, but I guess I've never felt this confident in a lineup in probably forever. I mean, 08 with Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins. I'm telling you, I watched that 93 team. I think this team's going to rival that one in runs scored for the most runs ever for a Phillies team. Not just home runs, runs.
Okay. Zach Wheeler, over 13.5 wins. He had 14 last year. I mean, the Phillies won 19 of his games, but he only got 14 Ws. I'm going to go over 13.5 wins because the ERA might go up a little bit, but this team is going to hit so much that he might win a few more games where he gives up 4 runs or something like that, just because we win 8-4 or something like that. So I'm going to say Zach Wheeler wins 15 games this year. Jason's pointing down. All the positivity, and he points down on that
because one. I think, unfortunately, I don't want this to be true, but I think he's going to be hurt. I think he's going to miss time. I do. I know.
I think he's scheduled to pitch Game 5 of the season still. So
I know his history, though.
Yeah,
with the Mets, he's an injury-prone guy. He's had multiple arm injuries. I'm just concerned. I'm not saying that I'm right.
That's a concern I have too.
I think 13 wins. I think he wins 13 on the nose.
Okay.
Not.
All right.
I'll say slightly over. but not by much. I mean, it's just he's not going to win 20. I mean, nobody wins 20 games anymore. And wins are not.
We're overrated.
Yeah, they're just not. And
It's an overrated stat.
Yeah,
absolutely agree with you. All right, so if wins are overrated, this is so weird that this is the number. That this, Aaron Nola last year had 223 strikeouts. He averages 228 a season. The over/under for strikeouts for Aaron Nola is 209.5. And that obviously, the numbers say that to smash the over on that. But why would the book put the number so low? The DH, maybe they think something that we should think about Aaron Nola. Me, I've already said he's not the 2018 Cy Young guy anymore. I don't know. And when you see a number like that as a bettor, you're like, something seems off there.
the numbers telling me something.
The number's telling you something. I don't know. Over under 209 strikeouts for Aaron Nola.
What do you?
Me? I just saw this number 5 minutes ago, and I'm not sure because the number's scary. I literally just pulled up these over-unders like as we were, getting Kevin Kinkead off the air. So I didn't really have time to digest these numbers. The obvious answer is the over, but then you see that, and then you're like, so I would just not bet it. But, I guess if I have to make a prediction, I'll say over, but it's going to be barely. Barely.
Listen, this is a home run / strikeout league. I would take the overs.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go over on that as well, even though I'm down on the Aaron Nola. But I think Aaron Nola is actually going to bounce back this year. I'm not saying he's going to be Cy Young Aaron Nola, but I think he has a better year than last year. And I think ERA, as far as Aaron Nola is concerned, a lot of times, I'm not saying it's inflated, because I think a lot of times Aaron Nola goes through the lineup 2 or 3 times and has no issues, and then he gives up that crooked number in the 7th inning, and that jacks up his ERA. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's a bad pitcher. I just think that a lot of times he doesn't locate his fastball at the wrong time, and that's what gets him in trouble. If he can just figure that out, Aaron Nola can be a Cy Young or an ace.
Over under the 2.5 spot in the NL East. So are they going to finish ahead of, second or first place, or are they going to finish third, fourth place in the NL? To me, it depends on what happens with the Mets. If DeGrom ever comes back, and the Mets spend a lot of money, but the Mets are the Mets. They always they just got bad luck sometimes, even to an extent. If the Mets are the typical Mets, then yeah, they finish in second place, the Phillies. But if the Mets actually, new team, new front office there, have turned it around, it's 3. But I'll say over 2.5 and say they finish in the second spot. But yeah, Mark.
I think they'll go second. I have no faith in the New York Mets whatsoever. They don't scare me.
I hope Aaron's watching this show, by the way.
The first time the Phillies play the Mets, we will. The first time the Mets play the Phillies, we will have Aaron on the show to talk that series. The playoff burst, it's over 0.5, which basically means, yes, you're betting the over, they're making the playoffs. No, you're betting the under. No, they don't make the playoffs. I say yes, they make the playoffs only because they added an extra playoff spot. I think they're still just a little too far away to be considered in that upper echelon of the absolutely they're making the playoffs. They're right there. They make the last spot. Again, 88 wins, just squeaks them in.
I don't think they have a choice. They got to make the playoffs. If they're going to win 92, they're going to win make the playoffs.
Hey, honestly,
I said 3 of the East teams are going to make it. So yeah,
honestly, I mean, I see maybe a minor positive regression or minor regression from the Braves, just because the NL East is a little bit better. We're better. Mark, if they win 92 games, they might win the division. That might be enough to win the division, honestly.
I hope so.
I think you could see the Braves winning 90 games, the Mets about 88, the Phillies about 88.
See, the way I have it is I have the Mets winning the division. I have the Phillies finishing second in the division, and the Braves third, and all 3 making the playoffs. I think it's going to be Mets 92 wins, Phillies 91, Braves 89, and that's how I have it.
Yeah.
And that's banking on the Mets not being the Mets, and that's banking on the Mets getting DeGrom back. Because if DeGrom doesn't come back, then yeah, that's a different situation to me. Yeah. But I don't think their pitching staff is just predicated on DeGrom and Scherzer, because they also went out and got Bassett. They have Carrasco. They have guys that Carrasco 3 years ago was a stud. Like, yes, he was injured, but once again, the Mets being the Mets is the biggest thing that we all in Philly will say. But eventually that's going to change, and the Mets aren't going to be the Mets, and they're actually going to perform to what they spent their money at. And that's where I'm looking at. I just think this is the year that they actually kind of get a turnaround per se. But I think all three make the – I mean, who's going to complain if we make the playoffs, right? If the Mets make it, who cares? Bring them on in the playoffs then.
All right, so opening day, they got the Oakland Athletics today, obviously. Kevin said smash that over-under of 8. Do we win on opening day in front of a packed Citizens Bank Park today? I'll be watching. I won't be there. But do the Phillies win today? Jason, yay or nay?
Yes, I think the Phillies come out. And
I do know you have talked about Frankie Montas is a pretty damn good pitcher for the Athletics right there. We're going up against a pretty strong.
He's a very good pitcher. I think we win predicated on emotion and energy down there at the ballpark. I think it's going to be packed. I'm assuming it'll be sellout.
I'm assuming that too. There's no way opening day.
Even though it's hard to have those 4 o'clock games be sellouts, but a lot of people take off work.
Yeah.
So
opening day, I think, is sold out. I saw secondary markets. The tickets in the 400 levels are going for $55. So I would love to go. I can't make it. I wish I could. I had the day off, but I haven't been to a home opener in a few years.
I've actually never been to an opener. I've been to game 2 multiple times because they normally actually do better giveaways on the second and third day of the season.
Yeah, you usually get the T-shirt the second day.
I tried looking for my championship T-shirt because I was there at game 2 in 2009 after the Phillies won the World Series. So I was trying to find it in my pile of T-shirts today. I couldn't find it, but I still have my champions T-shirt. I have at least 5 or 6 opening day T-shirts that were from the second day of the season. So
the last home opener that I actually attended was probably back in 2003, and I believe Jim Thome hit a triple off the wall. It was his first year that we had Jim Thome. I'll never forget it because everyone was psyched that we got Thome, and I thought it was gone, the ball off the bat, and of course it hit the wall. But that's the last time I was at a home opener. I wish I could go more often, like Mark said.
Yeah.
The fun was always college night. It was at the 3rd or 4th night. You guys remember back at the Vet in the old days, college night was like a night to just go sit in the upper deck with a bunch of college kids and just fight. I mean, there was literally massive brawls, and there was no rivalries. It was just go to the game, get drunk, and go on the upper deck and fight. And I went to one of those games that there was a big brawl, and as soon as I saw 60 guys all drunk start just for fun, just like, all right, is it time to fight, guys? Yeah, and they just all started fighting. I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm not getting involved in this. I'm not getting blacklisted from a Philly stadium. So.
Well, you remember the home opener back, maybe like 2000, where Monsignor Bonner students went and fought in the upper decks, and it was all over the Daily News. We need a day like that. We need something like that.
We're going to actually plan a trending in the AM. Well, we're planning a DSM, but we're going to plan a trending in the AM as well. We're going to get up and we're going to go to like a 1:00 game, and we're going to do a morning show right from the ballpark parking lot. Somehow, I'm not sure how, but we're going to do a morning show. We're going to sit in the parking lot till the game starts. We're going to go in, and then we're going to come out after the game and do a post-game show. I don't know how we're going to plan this, but we're going to do a trending.
I'll take off work.
Set it up, brother.
We're going to do this. All right, we're going to wrap it up. It's opening day here at DSM Media. Stay tuned because DSM Media will have their first pregame Phillies show. I'm not sure the exact time the show's starting. I know I saw in the group chat as we were doing this show, they were trying to hash out the start time for our opening day's pregame show. But we'll be live with a pregame show, and I'm sure Parcera will be live with his typical postgame stuff. So stay tapped into DSM Media all day. It's Friday. It's opening day. It's day 2 at the Masters. We're going to have a jam-packed weekend of fun here. in Philadelphia sports. So again, for Mark Moschitelli, at Mark with a C Moschitelli, Jason Voorhees, at Mustang3651, and our special guest today, Kevin Kinkead from Crossing Broad. Again, special shout out and thank you to him. I am Phil Stiefel at Beard and Knowledge. Y'all have a great day. Ring the freaking bell, people.
Ring the bell.
Ring the bell.